renowned horse racing handicappers that we all know and love so well, Mr. Marco D'Angelo from wagertalk.com. You can follow Marco on Twitter at Marco in Vegas. What's been happening, Marco?
Busy time, Kiev. This is Vegas this time of the year. The weather's starting to get hot, and unfortunately, I know that is my one of my air conditioning units went out today. The first triple-digit day of the summer, and a World Series of Poker's in town, and it's exciting time in the final leg of the Triple Crown, of course, this Saturday, the Belmont. So anything you want to do, and yes, and even let's not forget the Stanley Cup Finals winding down, and of course the NBA Finals as well.
Oh, absolutely, my man. The heat wave came to us, and we can definitely feel that out here out west, man. So it sucks your air conditioner went out. That's awful. I hope you have some cold ones and some fans on you to help cool you off, buddy.
We do. Fortunately, we have a two-story house, and it's the upstairs unit that went out, and that's where my office is, the home office. But we got the downstairs cranking, so as soon as I'm done with you, I'll be downstairs or poolside with some cold ones. So we'll manage.
Oh, I'm sure you will, man. And you played a little poker, didn't you? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the World Series of Poker goes on every year, starts the end of May and runs through July. Generally, second week of July, finishes up. This is the holy grail for poker players this time of the year. Everybody flocks to Vegas, but this was a special year. It was the 50th anniversary of the World Series of Poker, and they always put it on at the Rio here the last several years, and they did something different this year. They wanted to get a lot of people here for one of the opening events, and they had what was called the Big 50, the WSOP Big 50, and it was to celebrate the 50th anniversary. And what they did is they had a $500 buy-in, a low-price buy-in, to get as many people in here to be able to play a World Series of Poker event. And it was a rake-free tournament. And by rake-free, what that means is normally a poker tournament that had a price tag of $500 would actually be $565. $500 going to the prize pool and $65 going to Caesars Entertainment Group for putting the tournament on. That covers administration costs, the dealers, and so forth. But this tournament was $500 flat, all of that money going to the prize pool, and you got to start with a big chip stack. Everybody started with $50,000 in chips, and they set a world record. It was a 4-day ones. They had 4 different flights. They wanted to get as many people in as they could. They had a total of over 28,000 people enter this tournament, so it set a new record, and it was fun. I was in it. I got through day one. We played from 10 a.m. till midnight. Now, for an old guy like me, it's been a while since I put in a poker session of from 10 a.m. till midnight. That was a good 14-hour day for me. I was wore out, but I did make through day one, and we lasted long enough on day 2 to actually get a World Series of Poker cash to add to our resume. That was the first time I had a World Series of Poker cash. My particular flight had 7,100 entries in it, and I outlasted over 6,000 of them to get into the money. So I was kind of proud of that, and it was a fun time, and looking forward to some more events that I'm going to play later in the series.
Well, that's fantastic, man. The World Series of Poker has really grown, and $500 is definitely more affordable. You know, and no rake tournament. You got to love that. People coming in left and right. 28,000 entrants. What's that total handle? Like $14 million at $500 a pop. That's huge. Wow, sounds like a ton of fun, man. I used to play poker back in the day. Haven't had as much time, but I always think about getting back into it a little bit. So when the kids get older or something, we'll see. So the huge horse racing weekend, we got the Belmont going on. I heard you have a little personal interest in some of these races as well.
Yeah, my horse back in Pennsylvania that, knock on wood's been doing really good for us, our 3-year-old filly. She won for us her last start, and she's in a stake race on Saturday, actually, on Belmont Day, but not in obviously not at Belmont, but in my track at Pennsylvania. So I'll be at the sports book watching the Belmont, and I'll be watching my horse on the computer back in Pennsylvania as well. So we'll be doing a little split screen wagering on Saturday there to try to get our Belmont winner home and our own personal horse, Sin City Lori, back at the Meadows. And Sin City Lori is a homebred. I had her mother, and you have a kind of funny story, a cute story. The dam of this horse, her name was Cat and Mouse, and it was spelled, Cat was spelled with a K, K-A-T, which I named after my first wife. She passed away several years ago, but we named that horse after her, and ended up being the best horse I ever had. The horse ended up making like $270,000 for me, and this horse is out of that one. And ironically, I named this horse Sin City Lori, which is the name of my current wife. And so I told my wife Lori, I said, I named this horse after you, and I know how competitive women are. I said, Cat and Mouse made $270,000. That's the number. Go. Now it's your turn. Well, I said, I know you don't want to be outdone by my late wife, so you got a ways to go, but that's the number you're shooting for.
Well, you put her in the spot, and now we have to make that horse happen, right? The little competition here, $270,000. That's the line right there. So hopefully that'll all work out for you guys, and there would be you don't have to you can buy a nice dinner afterwards. So let's
every time the horse wins, I have to take her out for a nice dinner. So the stepdaughters tagged along in the last one too. So everybody's getting in on the wins. I got to keep winning just to pay for all these nice dinners. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. It's part of the deal, man. It's part of the contract. We know it really well, us guys. So fantastic. Well, hey, man, let's get right into it then. We have had the Kentucky Derby, we've had the Preakness, and now we have the third leg in the Triple Crown, the Belmont Stakes, coming on this weekend. Which horses from the Preakness and the Derby are running in this race?
Well, we actually only have one horse that's actually raced in all three. We've had several horses that raced in one of the two legs, but only one that's raced in all three, and that is War of Will, and that's the horse that's going to draw the most attention. He's the horse that was the center of all of the drama on Kentucky Derby Day, getting interfered with by Maximum Security, and Maximum Security in getting disqualified, and then after that we saw the owners of Maximum Security, Gary West, running, his mouth popping off and everything, but no Gary West in Maximum Security in the Preakness or the Belmont. He didn't come back and, put his money where his mouth is, so to speak, and run against this one. We're hoping these two hook up later in the year, maybe in the Travers, is looking at the first possibility that they could hook up. I know that a lot of people were hoping maybe they went to the Haskell, but the connections of War of Will have already said they're not going to the Haskell after racing all of these races. They're shooting for the Travers, which will come in August, give the horse a little bit more time after the Triple Crown Trail. But he's the horse that's done it. There is a couple horses that raced in the Preakness and coming back. Bourbon War, one of them, and Bourbon War was a horse that we were, really high on in the Preakness, and he never really fired. So I really can't give him, make an excuse for him what the problem was. They're changing jockeys on him. You had a couple other horses that raced in the Derby and are coming in here for the, this one, skipping the middle race. Spin-Off is one of the horses that raced in the Derby. Tax raced in the Derby. And another horse that's going to get a lot of attention, and we'll talk about him later, and that is Tacitus, the number 10 horse, who is the slight morning line favorite. He is a horse that finished fourth in the Kentucky Derby, skipped the Preakness, and has been training real well leading up to the Belmont.
Gotcha. So we have one horse that ran all three. The only one from the Preakness was Bourbon War, you said, I believe? The only horse that ran in the Preakness, and
Everfast also ran in the Preakness. And Everfast is the horse that, cost me my ticket. He ran up to get second, came right up the inside, and just won the photo for second place over Owendale. If Owendale would have got there, we would at least had some exacta savers that would have got us out of the race without taking the goose egg. But we did take the goose egg in the Belmont or Preakness, full disclosure.
I think a lot of people did, my man, and I don't know a ton of people that were on Everfast. Heard he had a pretty nice little run there, didn't he? A pretty open track for him. And
yeah,
and that's what I'm hearing from other people. I don't know what that means when it comes to this race, and I think we'll talk about that when we get a little bit later in this podcast. Who are the new shooters in this race?
We've got several new shooters. Jovia, if the rail is a new horse in this race. Sir Winston, new horse to the Triple Crown, and Intempered Heart are the only horses that haven't raced in either the Derby or the Preakness. Of those three horses, I give one of them a shot, and I'll save that for later because I think you're going to ask me maybe about a long shot, and there is one that does have a good. So I don't want to give the spoiler away yet, but of those three horses, the new shooters, there's one that we do like a lot.
All right, so there's three new shooters here, and the rest of them ran in either the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and one ran in both. Well, let's talk a little bit more about War Will here. Interfered with a little bit in the Kentucky Derby, as we all saw, and then all of a sudden, he gets his redemption, or whatever you want to call it, like the horse cares, right?
Yeah.
But he wins the Preakness, and he how good is this horse?
He's a good horse, Kiev, but as we've talked, we talked about this in the Preakness as well, and I'm going to talk about it even more so now. This is really just an average crop of 3-year-olds this year. We kind of got spoiled the last few years with the crops that we've had and having that one horse that was the absolute superstar. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, if War of Will wins the Belmont, we have to give him his due. I mean, because he won the Preakness, he won the Belmont, and he got his feet taken out from under him, in the Derby. He could have very well won the Derby. I still question if he if he would have had enough to win the Derby. Would he have been second? Absolutely. But Maximum Security still looks strong. So I don't know if he would have gotten around him, but we'll never know. So it'll be one of those ones where if he wins the Preakness and wins the Belmont, he'll have the old asterisk there. What if he didn't get interfered with? And then maybe we'd be looking at this crop in a totally different light. But for me, I just think that this Belmont this year, top to bottom, looking at all the horses in the field, this is probably the weakest Belmont that we've seen in the last several years.
Okay, so War Will, he had a really good trip from what people are telling me against that rail. It opened up for him. He stalked, and then he was able to turn it in high gear at the end. Do you expect him to do well in this longer race?
Well, he's going to be there, but I think what's going to be his undoing. I don't think he's going to have the problem. The first question everybody asks when you're, in the Belmont is, can he get the distance? I think he can get the distance, but I think what's going to end up getting him at the end is going to be the 3 races in 5 weeks. That is tough on any horse, and he's the only one in this race that is going to go through that. The horses, especially the ones that raced the Derby and then skipped the Preakness, I think those horses are the horses most likely to pull the upset, if you want to call it that, and beat War of Will, just because of the freshness and just because the Belmont is maybe a little bit more suited for their style than, say, the Preakness would have been.
Mm-hmm. I guess.
So that's where I'm looking at it and why I think War of Will not win the Belmont.
Well, there you go. War of Will. Fading War of Will here. I like it because he's definitely...
Don't toss him out, though. Don't toss him completely out. The horse is going to be around, but I think he gets beat for the win.
Well, we'll get into that, my man. What's the weather looking like here for the Belmont Stakes? We had a nice day at the Preakness. We had a terrible, sloppy Kentucky Derby. What are we looking like this weekend?
Yeah, we're looking here. Right now, the early weather forecast is clear and 78 for Sunday, so that's perfect New York weather. I mean, if you can get the sunny day, dry track, in a temperature, only in the upper 70s, that's perfect. Not too hot, not too cold. You couldn't draw it up better. If you were setting the thermostat, like on my air conditioner that's not working, that's where it would put it at.
That's where you wish it would be, right?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So we're looking good here so far. Let's not jinx anything. Why don't you give us a little history of the